After a mysterious, massive explosion, people uncovered an entirely new civilization. A young man sits by the train window. It's Jake Green. He stares out at the passing landscape, lost in thought. The train pulls into Denver. Jake steps onto the platform and heads toward the parking lot, where his old car, the one he left before he went away, still waits. He gets behind the wheel and drives toward Jericho, the small town where he grew up. On the streets of Jericho, Jake runs into an old friend, Stanley. They haven't seen each other in years. Jake had served in the Navy. Stanley greets him warmly, eager to catch up and reminisce about old times. He suggests meeting later that evening to talk properly, but Jake politely declines. He explains that he's only in town for a short visit, just to stop by his grandfather's grave before heading back. Jake stops at a local store to pick up some candy. There, he accidentally bumps into Emily. Their hug is awkward. It's clear they share a complicated past. Emily teaches at the local school and is engaged to a bank employee named Roger. Curious, she asks where Jake has been all this time. He repeats his story about serving in the military, but Emily doesn't buy it. She can see right through him. Finally, Jake arrives home. His mother, Gail, greets him with unfiltered joy. She hasn't seen her son in 5 years. Hearing his voice, Jake's brother Eric and their father Johnston come into the room. Eric embraces his brother, but their father only gives a curt nod. The tension between them is unmistakable. The family gathers in the living room. The conversation turns to money. Jake's grandfather left him an inheritance, but Johnston controls the funds. He firmly declares that Jake won't see a cent until he proves he's living a stable, responsible life. The air grows heavy. Gail suggests they visit the cemetery. Maybe it'll help calm everyone down. Standing by the gravestone, she urges Jake to tell his father the truth. She believes it would convince Johnston to release the money, but Jake refuses to open up. He's determined to keep his secrets. He tells his mother he needs to return to San Diego, then drives off. Back in Jericho, life goes on as usual. People listen to the radio, watch the news from Parliament, and then, suddenly, all signals cut out. The connection to the outside world is gone. In the distance, something terrifying becomes visible, a massive explosion, followed by a towering mushroom cloud, a nuclear blast. Mayor Johnston, Jake's father, learns about the catastrophe from his family. He tries to make a phone call, but every line is dead. Johnston assumes the explosion happened in Denver. He orders the sheriff to gather everyone at the station, while he goes to pick up his son Eric himself. Meanwhile, Jake spots the mushroom cloud in the sky. Distracted by the sight, he loses focus and crashes into another car. Deputy Jimmy says goodbye to his young son, promising he'll be back soon, then drives off to report for duty. At the police station, the town's leaders gather. Johnston and his team try to make sense of what just happened. The mayor firmly warns the officers not to mention an attack or invasion until they have solid proof. Their meeting is interrupted by a distressed woman shouting that the school bus carrying her daughter never returned from a field trip. Johnston does his best to calm her down and promises they'll start searching right away. Meanwhile, Jake regains consciousness after the crash. Jake's leg is injured. He checks another car. Unfortunately, no one survived. Realizing he can't rely on vehicles, he decides to head back to town on foot. Along the way, Jake encounters two frightened children pleading for help. He follows them and finds the school bus, the same one that went missing, full of kids. The driver had lost control after a deer ran onto the road. One girl is in critical condition. Her throat is swollen, and she can't breathe. Jake knows he has to act fast. He makes a small incision in her trachea, saving her life. Meanwhile, Robert Hawkins, a former police officer from St. Louis, approaches the sheriff. He offers to help, but the sheriff politely declines, saying Robert doesn't know the town well and might only slow them down. Robert suggests painting over the city name on the police car. If this is truly an attack, they shouldn't draw attention from outsiders. The sheriff, however, doesn't take his advice seriously. Out in the desert, the sheriff and his deputy come across a prisoner transport bus. At first, it seems empty. No one appears to be alive. Suddenly, one of the surviving criminals attacks the officers. Meanwhile, a teenager named Dale listens to a voicemail from his mom, recorded just seconds before the explosion. Then Dale heads to the mayor's house, where a group of people has gathered. They're talking by candlelight. Now the city is not only without communication but also without electricity. Dale plays the voicemail for them. It cuts off at the moment of the explosion, and everyone feels for him. His mother likely didn't survive, but she had called from Atlanta, which means the blast didn't just hit Denver. Multiple cities were attacked at the same time, and that terrifies the already anxious residents even more. Panic is spreading. Jericho is slipping into chaos. People start looting stores, stocking up on food, water, and fuel. Jake realizes the kids need to get to a hospital immediately. He moves the unconscious bus driver aside, jumps behind the wheel, and drives the children into town. Meanwhile, the mayor gives a speech to the townspeople. He reports the explosion in Atlanta but urges everyone not to panic and to stick together. Only by doing so can they survive this disaster. He also asks people to return to their homes and suggests gathering at City Hall the next day. Finally, the school bus returns to Jericho. A crowd of impatient townspeople surrounds it, while anxious parents rush to pick up their children. Jake's mother and brother help the injured Jake out of the bus and take him to a doctor. His father praises him for his heroic act and says that his grandfather would have been proud. Meanwhile, Emily drives along a deserted road at night. Sensing something strange, she stops and steps out of the car. Looking closer, she is horrified to see countless lifeless birds scattered across the road. By morning, Emily runs out of gas and has no choice but to continue on foot. In the city, Jake climbs to the roof of a tall building and sees a massive cloud advancing toward Jericho. The cloud was full of toxic chemicals, and soon radioactive rain would sweep over the city. Panicked, Jake called his father and the doctors to warn them. Authorities needed to find shelter before the rain began. Jake and the doctor checked the shelter under the hospital, while Johnston and his team cleared another bunker beneath City Hall. The problem was that there were only 2 shelters, and they couldn't fit all 5,000 residents. Supplies wouldn't be enough either. The mysterious ex-cop Robert offered his advice again, suggesting they seal their homes with tape and plastic sheets, better than nothing. The city officials were surprised by his knowledge, but Robert explained that he had been trained in this back in the St. Louis police. Meanwhile, a police car finally appeared on the highway. Emily shouted for them to stop. The car braked, and Emily ran up to it. She told the officers she had seen dozens of lifeless birds on the road. They explained it was the aftermath of a nuclear blast and offered her a ride. Emily got in, unaware that these weren't real cops. They were the escaped prisoners from the bus, disguised in police uniforms. Back in Jericho, Gracie, the supermarket owner, found Dale lying on the floor of her store. She tried to wake him when suddenly a man banged on the door, shouting that she had to open it. The bunkers needed to be stocked with supplies immediately. Police and firefighters raced through the streets, warning residents that they had only 90 minutes to seal all cracks and windows with tape. Families scrambled to follow instructions, trying to protect themselves from the radioactive fallout. Eric went from business to business, warning people of the danger. He ran into stubborn patrons in a bar. Mary, the bar owner and Eric's lover, complained that they refused to go to the bunker. One guy insisted he'd rather die playing pool than hide in a cramped bunker. But Eric warned that death wouldn't be quick, it would be long and agonizing. That convinced them, and they finally headed to the bunker. In the desert, Emily led the police officers toward a ranch where they were supposed to find gasoline. Sitting in the back seat, she noticed a tattoo on one of the men's necks, odd for a cop, and started feeling uneasy. The men stepped out to fill up, and suddenly the radio crackled to life. The deputy sheriff's voice warned that a prison bus had been found on the road and urged everyone to be extremely careful. Emily's suspicions grew. The criminals returned to the car and pulled Emily out. As she followed one of them, she noticed a red stain on his collar. Now she's sure, they're definitely not cops. While one of them rattles the house door, another criminal opens the trunk and finds real officers tied up inside, threatening to kill them if they make a sound. Soon a girl named Bonnie comes out from behind the house and ushers Emily and the criminals inside. Bonnie says the gas pump key is with her brother Stanley, who won't be back for another hour. Emily offers to feed the officers, and they all head for the kitchen. As they cook, Emily quietly tells Bonnie the truth about the cops. Bonnie is hard of hearing, so Emily explains the danger to her in sign language. At the hospital, Jake and his team rush to finish preparing the bunker. Heather, the teacher from the bus, helps Jake fix the wiring so the fans can push air into the shelter. In the store, Dale sees Skylar, the most popular girl at school. She refuses to go to the bunker, saying she'd rather wait at home for her parents, who are still in New York. Dale feels for her. He grabs some supplies and goes to her mansion. At first Skylar brusquely turns him away, then she softens, apologizes, and invites him to ride out the rain together. Despite everyone's efforts, the hospital bunker isn't ready to take people. Jake and the doctors panic, the toxic rain could start any minute. With no options left, Jake loads people into ambulances and buses and sends them toward City Hall. When the hospital convoy arrives, the horror becomes clear. The City Hall bunker can't accept any more people. Panic erupts. Eric agrees to take only the 10 most critical patients. Time is running out, so Jake decides to take the rest to an old mine where they can shelter. When they arrive, Jake figures out where to detonate dynamite to seal the mine entrance and protect everyone from fallout. He calls Eric and asks him to dig them out once it's safe. Eric is horrified by his brother's plan, but he believes it's the only way. Robert keeps helping the mayor prepare for the worst. He rigs a homemade radio and suddenly picks up an SOS signal. Robert records the message. His face goes pale, he's shaken. He crumples the paper, tucks it into his pocket, and tells the others the radio's broken. At the ranch, Emily distracts one of the criminals by accidentally spilling hot coffee on him. While he treats the burn, she slips a revolver off the wall. She apologizes and goes to the bathroom, then climbs out a window and crawls toward the car. She tries to reach someone on the radio to report the prisoners. Scanning channels, she briefly catches Jake's signal, then quickly changes frequency before he can reply. Jake realizes a woman is in trouble. He has to find her, but first he blows the mine entrance shut. Then he jumps into the truck and speeds toward the ranch like a maniac. It had been too long since Emily went to the bathroom. One of the criminals starts to get suspicious. Suddenly, his radio crackles to life. He gets a frantic message from Emily and realizes they've been exposed. Bonnie tries to run, but the second thug catches her. He holds Bonnie hostage while his partner sneaks up on Emily, aiming to shoot her. At that moment, Jake appears. He knocks the second criminal off his feet. Emily gets her chance. She shoots the one holding Bonnie. Both women are safe. At City Hall, Gail and Robert find Johnston lying on the floor of his office. The mayor has collapsed. They drag him to the bunker, where he receives medical attention. Once they're sure the mayor is stable, Robert heads home to his family. His wife is waiting and demanding answers. She's convinced he knows something. Robert snaps and tells her not to ask questions. He can't reveal anything. Finally, the rain begins. Everyone in the city hunkers down in shelters. People hold their breath, praying they make it through the night. Shutting himself in the room, Robert pulls out a crumpled piece of paper with a mysterious message. Using the buttons, he marks the locations: Colorado, Denver, Atlanta, Chicago, Philadelphia. Clearly, explosions had been reported in all of these cities. 18 hours after the explosions, Robert puts on a protective suit, climbs into the truck, and heads to the warehouses. There, he finds tools for moving heavy equipment and enters one of the storage units filled with military gear. He loads everything into the truck and drives off. At the ranch, Bonnie and the others are sitting in the basement. Bonnie worries that her brother, Stanley, still hasn't returned, but Jake reassures her that he'll be fine. Soon, Jake gets a call from his brother. Eric reports that their father is safe. Once Jake is sure everyone is out of danger, he asks Eric to dig people out of the mine. Meanwhile, underground, Heather distributes supplies and makes sure everyone has enough. She keeps people calm to prevent mass panic. Suddenly, the basement door at the ranch swings open. Stanley comes in, soaked to the bone. Bonnie wants to hug her brother, but Jake stops her. First, they need to make sure the rain isn't radioactive. They call April, the city's chief doctor and Eric's wife, and update her on Stanley's condition. After asking a few questions about his health, April advises giving him iodine and rushing him to the clinic as soon as the rain stops. She also warns that if Stanley starts vomiting, he won't survive. Once he comes to, Stanley shares something shocking. He saw several tanks heading toward Denver. The group is stunned by the news. In the bunker beneath City Hall, things start to calm down. Johnston is feeling better. Jake calls him to report the tanks. The mayor suspects it's the National Guard from Woodland conducting a rescue operation. Jake wants to go check it out himself, but his father warns him it's too dangerous. Still, Jake believes that's the only way to uncover the truth about what's happening, and his father reluctantly agrees. Emily decides to join Jake, hoping to also find her missing fiancé, Roger. Eric pretends to be the devoted husband in front of his family, and Mary watches, pained. When the moment is right, Mary tries to confront Eric about his marriage. He had told her his relationship with his wife was falling apart, but she can see that's not true. Eric refuses to discuss it, suggesting they focus on surviving the current crisis first. Once the rain stops, Eric goes outside to check radiation levels. Good news, it's safe, and people can start leaving their shelters. Jake asks the police to take Stanley and Bonnie to the hospital. Meanwhile, he calls Eric and asks him to help dig the people out of the mine. After they drill a hole through the rubble, Jake, Eric, and other townspeople help everyone climb out to safety. Skylar's friends stop by to check on her and find her playing cards with Dale. Her best friend teases Skylar, warning her to stay away from Dale because he's weird. Not wanting to look foolish, Skylar leaves with her friends. At the hospital, Jake lays out a plan. People need to be sent in all directions to gather information. They can't just sit around in the dark. His mother, Gail, is skeptical, but Johnston sides with his son. Johnston gathers Gray, his rival for mayor, and a few others, while Jake sends out teams in different directions to collect intel. Meanwhile, Eric tries to talk to Mary at the bar. She ignores him, busy serving other customers. Suddenly, an image flashes on the TV screen. But everyone is stunned. The broadcast is in Chinese. People in the bar start to panic, horrified at the thought that China might have attacked the U.S. Frustrated, Dale heads to Gracie's store. He's shocked, the shelves are almost empty. At that moment, Gail walks in with a box of groceries. Residents had returned what they didn't need from the bunker. Worried, Gracie explains that it's not nearly enough to keep the store running. The expected shipment is delayed, and without electricity, any food would spoil anyway. But Gail comes up with an idea. Cook everything that's left and feed the townspeople so nothing goes to waste. Gray packs a bag, preparing to leave in search of supplies. Johnston stops him and thanks him for his courage. Gray sees the opportunity to undermine the mayor, blaming him for the lack of shelter preparedness that allegedly cost a life. Johnston drags him into the office, punches him in the gut, and warns him not to tear the town apart while they're still facing the bigger problem. The team set out on their journeys. After an argument with Emily over the uncertain fate of her fiancé, Jake heads south alone. A few miles from town, Right on the highway, he comes across 2 crashed airplanes. After retrieving the black box, Jake returns to town and, along with his father and others, listens to the recordings. In the background, he hears news that the plane Emily's fiancé was supposed to be on safely landed in a field in Kansas. Jake shares the news with Emily, and she cries tears of joy. That evening, the townspeople gather together. They celebrate surviving the harrowing events with a barbecue on the street, using the remaining supplies from the store. Robert's wife asks if they can take the kids to join the festivities, but he insists they're not ready. Then he locks himself in a room and starts building barricades. It's clear he knows far more than the locals. At the party, Skylar hangs out with her friends, ignoring Dale. Later that night, he goes for a walk and unexpectedly comes across a train. Dale shines a flashlight on it. It's the very train that was supposed to deliver a new shipment of goods to Gracie. For the next few days, the people of Jericho have little to worry about. What do you think Robert is hiding? What was in that SOS message he heard on the radio, and why didn't he tell anyone? And what do these mysterious explosions really mean? Share your theories in the comments down below, smash that like button, and don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next video.